She turned our love story into a lesson asterisk asterisk. I used to believe that love, once found, was something you protected with your whole heart. Something you built slowly, nurtured carefully, and held onto tightly because life didn't hand out second chances that often. But loving her taught me something I never expected, that sometimes love doesn't break you suddenly. Sometimes it teaches you, painfully and quietly, one realization at a time. Her name was Ava. The first time I saw her, she wasn't doing anything romantic or memorable. She was standing in the lobby of our university library, frustrated because the scanner kept jamming, muttering under her breath about printers having a personal vendetta against her. I remember that small moment because it was real, no filters, no performance, just her being herself. I smiled. She noticed. And somehow, that became our first conversation. We weren't a movie-type love story. There were no dramatic entrances or perfect timing. We simply kept ending up in the same places at the same times until it stopped feeling like coincidence and started feeling like certainty. She laughed easily, cared deeply, and somehow saw through me in ways that felt both comforting and terrifying. Back then, I thought that kind of connection could carry you forever. I didn't know yet that some people hold your heart only long enough to teach you how to protect it later. Our love grew in the small spaces of everyday life, late-night study sessions, morning coffees even though she hated caffeine, the long walks where she'd talk about dreams she was too shy to chase out loud anywhere else. She had a way of making everything feel light. Even silence felt full when she was in the room. Over time, I let my guard down completely. I gave her the version of myself that didn't pretend to be okay all the time. She knew things I never told anyone else. My fears, my past, my triggers, the insecurities I kept carefully hidden from the world. She didn't just hold my heart. She held the map to my vulnerabilities. And that felt like safety. For a while. Looking back, I realized the shifts didn't happen overnight. They were slow, almost gentle. Subtle enough that at first I mistook them for stress, for a rough week, for the natural ups and downs of any relationship. She didn't stop loving me suddenly. She just stopped showing it gradually. The good morning text became seen at 8:03 a.m., no reply. The calls grew shorter. The plans turned into excuses. The laughter faded into polite smiles. The openness turned into guarded conversations. At first, I tried not to worry. I told myself she needed space. I thought love required patience, and because I loved her, I offered endless amounts of it. But patience is a strange thing. Too little hurts the other person. Too much hurts you. One evening, after another canceled plan, I asked her if something was wrong. I meant it gently, carefully. I wasn't accusing. I was concerned. She looked at me with a distant softness, as if she was already half gone, and said, "I'm just tired." I believed her. I shouldn't have. Because tiredness doesn't make someone hide their phone. Tiredness doesn't make someone suddenly care too much about how they look when they leave the house but careless when they come home to you. Tiredness doesn't make someone excited to leave and uninterested to return. Still, I stayed. Because the truth was harder to accept than the comfort of denial. I remember the exact moment everything shifted from, "Maybe things will get better," to "This is not the person you fell in love with." It was a rainy Sunday afternoon. We hadn't spoken much that week, and I suggested we cook together, something simple, just an excuse to be close again. She agreed, though reluctantly. We stood side by side in the kitchen, cutting vegetables in silence. When I reached for her hand, she flinched slightly. Not dramatically, just enough. Enough for me to feel the truth settle heavily in my chest. Love wasn't leaving me. She was. A week later, she asked to meet at a small cafe near the campus. I knew what was coming. You can always feel the ending before it arrives, even if you pretend not to. She sat across from me, her fingers wrapped around her coffee cup the way someone holds onto a lifeline, and she said the words that felt both rehearsed and hesitant. "I feel like I'm losing myself. I need space to figure out who I am." I nodded, but inside, something cracked quietly. She didn't leave me for someone else, not physically anyway. But her heart had already started drifting long before her words caught up. I could see it in her eyes. She wasn't choosing herself. She was choosing a different version of life where I didn't fit anymore. What hurt wasn't that she left. What hurt was that she taught me how to love fully, then walked away as if that didn't matter. After she ended things, I spent weeks trying to understand what I did wrong. I replayed our moments, dissecting them, analyzing every detail the way someone searches for clues in a mystery they refuse to accept as solved. Was I not enough? Did I love too much? Did I miss the signs? Was she waiting for me to fight harder? Or did she never intend to stay at all? The answers didn't come quickly. They came slowly, painfully, during long nights when silence felt heavier than truth. I learned that loving someone doesn't always guarantee you'll be loved in the same way. Sometimes people love the comfort you give them, not the person you are. They love the peace you bring, the stability you offer, the assurance you provide, until they realize they want something that feels like chaos instead of calm. Ava once told me she feared being boxed in.
I didn't understand it then.
I do now. She didn't want a steady love. She wanted a love that didn't ask her to stay grounded, that didn't require her to choose consistency over curiosity. And I was consistency. For months after the breakup, I avoided anything that reminded me of her. The cafe, the library, even the walkways where we used to laugh about nothing. Memories had a way of ambushing me, appearing at the worst possible moments, drowning me in nostalgia I didn't ask for. But pain, like everything else, has a timeline. It doesn't leave quickly. It doesn't leave politely. It leaves when you finally stop feeding it. The turning point came unexpectedly during a quiet evening at home. I found an old notebook she once gifted me, a worn-out leather journal with a quote embossed on the front. Asterisk. We write to understand ourselves. Asterisk. At the time, she encouraged me to write more, to put my feelings into words. She said I had a voice worth sharing. Ironically, she became the reason I stopped writing when we ended. But on that night, holding that journal, I felt something familiar stir in me. The need to make sense of everything. I opened it. The first page was blank. So I wrote. Not about her at first. Just about me. My fears, my confusion, my heartbreak, my healing. The words didn't come easily. They came painfully. But they came. And with every page, I felt myself returning piece by piece. Over the next few months, I changed, not in the dramatic, world-shifting way people often romanticize, but in subtle, quiet ways. I became calmer, more observant, more intentional. I learned to appreciate the kind of peace that comes from knowing your worth doesn't depend on someone else choosing you. Eventually, I ran into her again almost a year later. It was a warm evening, and I had stopped by a small bookstore downtown. As I turned a corner between shelves, there she was, standing with a book in her hands, looking exactly how I remembered her and nothing like the person she used to be with me. She smiled. A gentle, familiar smile. Not painful. Not nostalgic. Just human. We talked briefly. She told me she was doing well. I told her I was too. The conversation was polite, almost distant, but not uncomfortable. Then she said something I never expected. You were good to me. I wasn't ready for that. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't closure. It was simply honesty. And surprisingly, that was enough. Because by then, I had already learned the lesson she never meant to teach me. You can give someone everything and still not be what they need. And that doesn't make you unworthy. It simply means their story needed a different chapter, and yours needed a different direction. I walked away from that encounter feeling lighter, not heavier. For the first time, I wasn't carrying the weight of why. I wasn't blaming myself. I wasn't wishing things had gone differently. I was simply grateful. She didn't stay in my life, but she left me with lessons. She taught me that love isn't about convincing someone to hold on. It's about being strong enough to let go when they no longer want to. She taught me that losing someone isn't always a failure. Sometimes it's a necessary shift. She taught me that heartbreak doesn't define you, it refines you. Most of all, she taught me that the right person will never make you feel like you're too much or too little. They'll meet you exactly where you are, without fear or hesitation. Ava was my love story once. But in the end, She became my lesson. And lessons stay longer than people ever do.